You're listening to the Lost Geographer podcast, and this is episode 24 on Venezuela.
In our modern globalized society, understanding geography and culture is crucial if you want to succeed in life. Unfortunately, many people are still unaware of the world around them, which is fueled by media that are focused only on profits, clicks, and promoting agendas rather than providing accurate information. Here at the Lost Geographer, we aim to promote geographic and cultural literacy through education and travel by bypassing the media. We have guests who talk about their own countries from a native perspective, travellers telling their stories and lessons, and related topics that will aid you on your journey towards geographic and cultural literacy. Get the raw, candid truth about the world we live in and understand your place in it. Because at the end of the day, it's your world. Own it.
Hey everybody, so while this podcast and site do increase your geographic and cultural literacy, the best way to attain literacy is through travel. Now, I understand that many people think traveling is expensive and stressful, and understandably so. However, it doesn't have to be this way. Traveling can be cheap and relatively stress-free if you know the right places to look for flights and already have an understanding of common travel mistakes. If you want to learn how, check out The Ultimate Guide to Smart Budget Traveling. It's a video course that will teach you how to save hundreds on your next vacation and thousands throughout your life by showing you how to make different rewards programs work for you and introduce you to sites that have prices you could have only dreamed of. I will show you how I've done things such as book transatlantic and transcontinental flights in the US for less than $10, and how I don't pay ATM fees anywhere in the world and withdraw money according to the exact exchange rate and not get ripped off. Want to learn more? Check out literacy.thelostgeographer.net for more information. Consider it an investment to learn how to invest in experiences to become geographically and culturally literate. Again, you can find it at literacy.thelostgeographer.net. Hey everybody, real quick before I start the episode, I want to apologize for the fact that this episode quality isn't the greatest. It had to be done over the phone rather than on Skype like I normally do, so the recording quality wasn't that great. However, what you're hearing is significantly better than what was originally recorded, and to that I want to thank Chris from Podshaper. He really helped me out and making this sound a lot better. He did a great job fixing the audio up so that you guys could listen to it and it doesn't sound annoying and muddy. So I want to give Chris a shout out. If you have a podcast that needs to be edited, just check him out at Podshaper. You can check that out at podshaper.com, or you can email him at chris@podshaper.com. All right, now we'll get to the episode.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Lost Geographer podcast, where our goal is to promote geographic and cultural literacy. It's your world, own it. I'm your host, Rohit Amritar, founder of The Lost Geographer. You can find us at www.thelostgeographer.net. And this episode, we're headed back to South America, and I'm here with Ricardo from Venezuela. How are you doing, man?
Hey, how's it going?
I'm doing well, thanks. I'm excited to have you on here.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, for sure. I think this is our third South American country you've done, so yeah, ready to get to it. So first, tell us a little bit about yourself, where you're from, and where all you've lived.
Okay, my name is Ricardo Pineda. I'm a journalist, Venezuelan, born and raised in Maracaibo, Zulia State, and been living in the United States for the last 3 years.
Cool. And so you're in New York, right?
Right now I'm in New York, yeah. I've been in California, Florida, and now I'm in New York. And it's been a ride, quite a ride to get to, reacquainted to lots of places in the United States and people that I care about, and the culture that I also enjoy.
What are some manners and etiquette that you see Venezuelans observe that you don't see in America, or vice versa?
Well, it's not that, it's better or, I prefer one to another. I mean, there are certain aspects of the American culture that I love. For example, when I used to live in Boston, I stayed with an American family while I was studying English. I like the supper time. It was like a real, traditional, and you have to be there. There was no excuse. I mean, you cannot see for breakfast, lunch, but you have to be there for supper time. So that was, that was very nice to be part of that. And in Venezuela, of course, it's different. I mean, when you go to college and you don't go to another state, you stay home. A lot of young students, after they graduate from high school in the United States, they go to campus and they don't go back home at all unless, you go for a holiday. But in Venezuela, it's so much different. I mean, you are very much in contact with your house, your home, your mom and dad, your siblings, and you're still studying there and just like, going to school. But it's hard to believe for some people, unless from Maracaibo, but you can go and study in Caracas, and of course you have a more independent kind of lifestyle. And a lot of people from Caracas also come to Maracaibo, and they probably have a relative or friends, and they stay over. But for me, it was more the traditional way. I stayed home. I graduated there, and just had my house and share breakfast and lunch and dinner with my folks. So that was fun. But it's very different from here, from the United States.
So would you say the culture overall is more family oriented?
Yes. I would say that in Venezuela, we have, I wouldn't say stronger ties, but yeah, in Venezuela, it's more family oriented in that sort of way. Whether it's a gathering, there's a party, the whole family comes together, and that's very nice to have.
So I know this is true in other South American countries. I don't know if it's true in Venezuela, but do you guys touch other people?
Yes, okay. Yes, that happens a lot. For me, it's quite normal.
Yeah,
and
I know.
You kind of, take it for granted, and you don't highlight it, I mean, we do. We kiss and hug, and we pat on the back, and it's always like that. We're more friendly in that way. I don't mean to say that, in some other cultures, people are not friendly because of that, but yeah, we're more in touch with everybody. I mean, it's just like the way it is. And people don't mind. It's just, part of our culture. I mean, it's hard to explain. I mean, but it's the way it goes, and everybody's, happy about it. And that's right.
What are some interesting facts about the culture, the history that you feel like the audience would benefit from knowing about?
Well, Venezuela is culturally diverse. I was born and raised in Maracaibo, like I said earlier. Maracaibo is the capital of Zulia State. Zulia State is where the oil companies actually, work on the land, and, they produce the oil, basically. So we have a lot of industries. So you have to take under consideration that in the 1920s and 30s, when Mene, which was the indigenous word for oil, petroleum, was found, a lot of companies and transnational companies came to Venezuela. The capital, of course, is Caracas. That's where all the politics and all the businesses are being decided. But in Maracaibo, Zulia State is where you actually get to work, and you started to have like this sort of companies, and you would have American companies and German workers and Italian, Greeks. I mean, it was culturally diverse back then, and thanks to the oil production, I would say that, the big cities, they were actually cities, but they were like colonies, because it was very, the city just lived on, on their traditions. And in Maracaibo, for example, we have the Lake of Maracaibo, and a lot of tradings and the commerce, with the Gulf of Venezuela, which connects to the Caribbean. So that gives you an idea of the trade commerce that we used to have there before the oil industry settled over. But, we started to have people from Chevron, Texaco, Baker Hughes, all these transnationals, and a lot of the workers who knew how to, build the pipelines and to bring all the tubes and all these materials, they come from abroad. And of course, for the locals, it became like a natural process of getting to know and, absorb each other's culture. And that's what we have in Venezuela. It's a mixture of different cultures, different traditions, and I wouldn't say that something get lost in translation over there, but we adapt the culture, and once you're there locally, it becomes part of your surroundings, if that makes sense. And of course, we became one of the first Latin American countries to actually be more in contact with, the industrial age and technology driven and all sort of that.
So did a lot of these foreign workers come and stay in Venezuela, or did they go back to their home countries?
Yes, yes. Well, a lot of people stayed. A lot of people went back. Of course, we adapted lingos and we adapted, I would say, manners, the way of, the clothing. Of course, you started to wear jeans and T-shirts, and sometimes, not even fitted for our weather, but, it just became part of our identity. People have stayed for numbers of reasons. There are people who stay there because of business and because they fell in love with a Venezuelan girl, which is not very hard to do. And yes. And of course, the music, the Latin beat, and the weather, of course. In Maracaibo, we usually have two types of weather. It's summer almost all year, and of course, we have the rainy season. So we don't have any winter. We don't have any fall. It's just hot as it is. But the other thing about Venezuela is that you want to go to the beach. You have the beaches of Falcon State, which is like 3 or 4 hours away. You just drive a car. Or you want to go to the mountains. You drive up 6 hours, and you've got very beautiful weather up there in Mérida State or Trujillo State. And it's very colonial, the typical houses that were built in the 40s, the 50s. A lot of architects came to Venezuela, and they did some impressive work. And of course, you have to take in consideration that, of course, there were a lot of indigenous, and there still are indigenous ethnic groups in Venezuela. In Zulia State, I can talk about Zulia State because that's where I was more in contact with. But you have the Wayuu or the Guajiros. And they live in very impoverished areas, but they remain, intact with their roots and their customs, the way they dress, and I won't say they won't follow the rules or the laws. They have their own laws, their own beliefs, and you can totally coexist in that environment. So when you go to a place like Maracaibo, it's so diverse that sort of way. So yeah, it's very interesting. Very interesting.
I'm glad you brought up the whole oil industry thing, because that actually leads right into my next question about what is the business climate like there? So what is the climate like? And if I were to go do business with a Venezuelan, how would it be? Would it be very informal? Would I have to take him out to lunch or afterward or something like that?
Interesting. Of course, there's the formal meeting process sort of way. You sit down in an office, you get to know each other, you talk in a very formal manner, very decent. And of course, depending on the person and depending on the business you're about to conduct, I would say, usually it's going to be more of a formal introduction at an office. And then you go to lunch, of course. Then you could have actually a few beers or a couple of drinks, just to break the ice a little bit. But it's very welcoming. People are going to make sure you feel comfortable in Maracaibo. And, but basically, everything starts in a very formal manner, but you try to look for a way to be more engaged with one another. And if the personality clicks, you're there. That's what's so good about Maracaibo. Maracaibo, in Venezuela in particular, has always been open to foreign investors and business partners. Of course, I'm talking about in a historical context, not in the contemporary context that we're in now.
Interesting.
But basically, yeah, for private businesses, you got it.
And so would you say that you guys are more forward, like straightforward, or kind of beat around the bush when it comes to negotiations?
No. Well, we actually are very forward, especially in the streets. People they speak their mind. One of the assets of the Venezuelan people, especially people from Maracaibo, we make a joke out of everything. If something's on the news, we're just going to twist here and there just to make a joke, and it becomes the popular joke of the day, to give you that sort of example. But no, we're very forward. Unless it's a very formal meeting and you try, when you conduct a business or you're negotiating, the rules of negotiation is not to lay out all the cards on the table, Usually, you go to the street and you can bargain. If you go to the store, if it's an informal store, you might want to bargain a little bit, but yeah, I think it's very forward. I don't think it's, it depends, of course, what's the type of business. I haven't been in all business meetings in my life, but knowing the people from back home, that everybody has a very different way of approaching business, and some are very forward and they are not willing to negotiate, and some are like more willing to negotiate, or some just like, go beat around the bush and stall or try to, to juggle the exact way of doing business.
When you were saying earlier about how Venezuelans also like to make jokes out of things, would you say that means that, I guess, no humor is really off limits? Like, you guys are not really politically correct?
Oh, definitely. I mean, the jokes we can make over there in Venezuela, of course, this is a street joke. This is not like a media joke. You make it so colloquial, right? And it's just so part of our way of being and we're doing things that we just accept it, we take it with a grain of salt and we just laugh. You're just looking for the laughter. You're just looking for the punchline. And, some of them are politically incorrect. Some jokes about headlines, that happens around the world. Could be very insensitive, but you don't try to be mean or nasty. You just try to be humorous and spontaneous, and some jokes come out of thin air. You wouldn't even imagine. There are many folks back home that they love make jokes out of nothing, and you're just amazed. And being from there, you just say like, "Whoa!" I mean, it's incredible. It happened, the story, a news broke or something, and in less than 2 hours, they're already making, what's up. They have what they call the chain. I don't use WhatsApp much, but they make like chain messages, and everybody receives those jokes, and you're just like amazed, like how much, so little amount of time they already making up jokes and backstories and everything. It's amazing. GIFs or the emoji. No, not the emoji. The captions. They just use the picture and they write something on top of it and they make a joke. Yes, the memes. Exactly. So you're just like unbelievable. But that's the way we are. We laugh at things, even in the darkest hours. Even when everything seems hopeless, everything seems nothing good coming up. Somebody will make a joke out of it. I wasn't thinking about this until now, but you remember, I feel bad about saying this, but you remember when Robin Williams died, the comedian, the actor?
Yeah.
The news report said he suffered from depression, which is a very serious issue here in the United States. In Venezuela, the situation is so bad economically, socially, politically, that people were, the joke that I most remember was, wait, Robin Williams was suffering from depression? He should have gone to Venezuela and stay there for a month to actually know what depression really is. I mean, in a very, humorous sort of way. Of course, it's not coming out humorous from my side because, I'm not trying to make fun of it, of course. For me, it was a tragedy. I was shocked when I heard the news. But that's the everyday, the common day people for you. And we just made jokes about it. Oh, he's on depression. Oh, you should have come to Venezuela to wait in line for the supermarket, or having, I don't know, shortage of electricity and water and insecurity and and all sorts of that. But of course, you have to understand that in the context, and people laugh about it, but it's an issue that you don't laugh about. I mean, that's just to give you an example of.
Got it. Yeah, I understand. That's fine. It's good to expose these things. So if someone did go to Venezuela, they know, oh, okay, I shouldn't be offended because this is just what they do.
Yes. No, of course. You shouldn't be offended. That's the key. I mean, right now, I think in the United States, everything is politically correct. One wrong tweet, one wrong comment, and that's it. I'm not trying to come here to the United States and say how you should, do things, because I actually respect the way things are. In Venezuela, if you get offended, it's worse for you as an individual, because if you're in a group and you don't laugh about it and you say something like, I think that it's very wrong, they're going to grill you over that and they're going to come up with a nickname, based on that situation where you just defended, you stand on something, and that's it, buddy. You're going to have a nickname for life. And everybody, when they see you, they're just going to laugh and remember about that situation. I trust me, I learned that the hard way.
Oh, man, that's funny.
Yeah.
What are some other ways that the cultures are different? Not necessarily for better or for worse, but just differences that you can point out.
Well, with other countries, it has to be a lot with the geography. For example, Maracaibo is above, actually, we live on the sea level. We have Lake Maracaibo there, which connects with the Gulf of Venezuela, and from there to the Caribbean. Right there, I'm just talking about our personality traits. When you're driving in Maracaibo, good luck. I mean, everybody has their own rules. You don't get a ticket if you run a stop sign or a red light, or you're in a hurry, you just go the other way. But of course, that would be very different from here. People actually have to respect, you could get a ticket, you could be fined. And in Venezuela, I don't think that happens quite a lot. I think, it all depends on your upbringing. If you have a party at home, something that would happen when you organize a party, you have a list of guests. It's a very informal party, especially informals or formal party, doesn't matter. And there's always going to be a couple of people who you didn't even think of, you didn't even meet, and they're going to be at the party. They're going to show up regardless because they're cousins or friends of a friend of a friend of one of your guests, and you just happen to be nearby. So, and that's cool, I guess. I mean, you're not like, what are you doing here? Get out. I mean, that doesn't happen. And of course, if you go to La Guajira, which is where most of the indigenous community, the Wayuu community, the ethnic group from Zulia, they have their own rituals, they have their own beliefs. It's very different. So that's why I'm telling you, it's culturally diverse. I know from friends who are from Italian heritage, their Sunday afternoon brunch, and they stick with it, while there are other families who they do something different. But basically, I'm just trying to think about a good one. But, in Argentina, for example, a lot of people, they close the stores around 2:00 in the afternoon, and they come back at 7 because they stay up all night. Of course, you have to consider the weather, cooler there. There's more wine, drinking, bars, and it's more in that sort of way. It's different. It's similar to Italy, where you work in the morning, take a break in the afternoon, you go home, you eat lunch, you go to bed, you take a nap, and then you wake up and dress up again, and you go back to work, and you work till late. And it's like in Venezuela, that is not the way it is. From 8 to 12, 2 to 6 sort of businesses, and of course the usual restaurants, they're open until late, but everybody's at home to watch the 7 o'clock show. And at 9 o'clock, we have the soap operas. Venezuela, it was very famous during the 80s and the 90s for producing one of the best soap operas in Latin America. And everybody will be at home watching the TV. It will be like watching a sitcom, but in this case, a romantic drama like Days of Our Lives. But it's the afternoon runtime that you have here. We run it at 9, and everybody will watch it. Everybody likes a very good romantic story. That you could say is one of our, not tradition, but, culturally, I think we're very different. In Brazil, I know it's the same way because they produce very good soap operas, and in Colombia as well. It all depends on the regions. And I think in South America, we are very much alike. I don't know what other people from which countries you interviewed, but it's basically very much like that. And I would say that the one down south, like Argentina, Paraguay, Uruguay, Chile, they have their own way of doing things, but because of the climate, it's all different. And when you're in the tropics, I think you're more effective. That's what I'm trying to say here. And the food. We can talk about the food for hours. And during Christmas time, there's the ham bread, there's the jackas, you have the chicken salad. But me personally, I'm not a very big fan of those. I do like the pabellón criollo. Pabellón criollo is a traditional dish. It's made out of black beans, white rice, shredded beef, and plantains. And of course, palmita cheese. What am I saying? Palmita cheese, which is, of course, made in Zulia State, in Maracaibo. In Maracaibo, we also grow plantains, plátanos. So we are very famous for that. And we make patacones, which are delicious. And you can actually, the arepa could actually be like the traditional hamburger here in the United States. But instead of bread, we're just talking about, wait, I know the ingredient. It's white corn powder.
Okay.
So you have white corn powder arepas, and you can fill them with butter, with cheese, with chicken, beef. Oh, I even know this for a fact that there are people who actually use the hamburger. They just take the beef out and put it inside an arepa. So there's a cultural mix right there. Yes. And of course, Chinese rice. It's not the Chinese rice you get in China. It's just Chinese rice with ham, with beans, with chicken, fish, shrimp, everything. I mean, you just make, you actually adapt what you make in other countries, but culturally you make it your own. So yeah, that's very interesting. Very interesting to watch.
That was great. This is my favorite part of the interview, talking about food. What would you say is your absolute favorite thing about Venezuela? What makes you most proud to be Venezuelan?
Well, I mentioned the humor, but also the potential that Venezuela has. It's rich in minerals, it's rich in land, in geography. It's very diverse. You have mountains, you have beaches, you have the plain field. There's so much that you can do in Venezuela. And of course, the talent of the people. People, are hardworking. They're very creative. That's what I like about Venezuela the most, that people are hardworking. And even through adversity, the show must go on. You have to just get up and try your best and do whatever it takes, to get through the day. And I'm pretty sure that with the right management and, the proper tools or the liberties to pursue what you actually want to do in a very honest way, in a very ethical way, I think Venezuela has so much potential to become a much greater country that it already is or it has been known for. I mean, I think there's so much more to come in those terms. And the people, it's just what makes the difference. That's the best thing about Venezuela.
And going off of that, would you also say that's the most underrated aspect about Venezuela?
Sure, definitely. You have Catatumbo in Zulia State, which is very, that's a place where a lot of scientists and geologists go to because it's a phenomenon. There's balls of lightning. It's a specific area where you can just go there and just see, lightnings throughout all night, every day of the year. And a lot of people are interested. There's so many things to learn from, so many curious things about what lies in Venezuela. So, the Catatumbo lightning, that's something that a lot of people haven't, it's been in the news and there have been articles written about it, but a lot of people feel like, whoa, there are so many things that can be done and explored, to make it more, so people can actually know that this place exists, the Catatumbo lightning. So, there's so many interesting things that people haven't still, you have the Angels Falls, for example, in Amazonas State. Beautiful, beautiful place. But, that's more of a tourist attraction. But, the richness of the nature and, of course, the minerals, like I said earlier, the reserve of gas, of oil in some other regions of Venezuela, still has a lot of potential to develop. And, I would say that's one of the most underrated things, Awesome.
So finally, to wrap up this podcast, what would you, if someone in the audience were interested in learning a little bit more about Venezuela and its history and its culture, could you recommend a book that they could look at so that they could learn more?
I could come up with a witty answer and go with the all-time perennial favorite, Doña Bárbara by Rómulo Gallegos. It's a very good book. It's a love story. It's a tragedy. Well, it's an amazing book. It's actually it's about a strong-willed woman, almost like the boss of this area, of this land. And do you remember the character played by Daniel Day-Lewis in Gangs of New York?
I have not seen that movie.
That is technically the very same characteristic of this character. Is a fascinating woman, so much power, and she's seductress, and at the same time she's dominating. And so another book that I like is Casas Muertas by Miguel Otero Silva. It's a very good book as well. It talks about the declining state of a town in the plains in the center of Venezuela. You have death, malaria, and the emigration of the inhabitants to the big cities to pursue the very same, well, not gold rush, but oil rush. Remember that when the oil company settled in Venezuela, a lot of people left the farms and the land to come to the big cities in pursuit for, to become rich. And a reflection of this a very same nature in those texts, the even uneven distribution of wealth, the external circumstances that surround, that goes along with it. I think that lately Venezuela has become that minimized version of Ortiz, which is the town that is being described in the book, in a much more extreme way. Right now, people from the big cities in Venezuela are emigrating to other countries in pursuit of, well, in this case, their own well-being and their own success. And not much for a book, but an essay. An excellent journalist, writer, and thinker was Arturo Uslar Pietri. He already warned us about the rentist economy that came upon Venezuela to the production of oil. The rentist economy, of course, is to pay for the importation with the process of the oil production. In a timeless newspaper article, he called Sembrar el Petróleo, to breed the oil. It has become a generational creed among intellectuals in my country, mainly because of the dependency of oil and the search for alternative ways of income to build a proper society, which means that, do not depend solely on the oil. Let's breed the oil. Let's make it grow, but culturally, socially, not just depend on the tradings of exportation or importation. I mean, to actually create a society that is very well aware that what does it mean, how is the process of selling it and cultivate it to our own society standards and ethical standards. But personally, I'm very fond of the poet Rafael Cadenas. His essay En torno al lenguaje, around language, is simple yet engrossing. He talks about the omnipotent importance of language as such. Of course, it has to do with creative writing and reading, and actually how you have to be ethical with your own language when writing. That essay for me was fundamental when I was in college, but the other two novels that I mentioned before, those are very popular books and authors from Venezuela. But also the newspaper article from Arturo Uslar Pietri, which became like a template of what are the things that are not working in Venezuela. That the message here is that even though right now the economies of the world and the orders and everything that those are in power, we still have the opportunity to build that nation and that continent the proper way it is. The key to all of this is education, ethics, and being creative without losing sense of humor and our traditional values of family and culture.
Awesome. Ricardo, thank you so much for this interview.
No, thank you. I hope I made sense out of all this. So it made me look bad. That's the only thing I'm asking.
It was very, very insightful. Can't wait to put this out. All right, to the audience, hope you enjoyed that. Stay tuned next week for more awesome content. And remember, until then, it's your world. Own it.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Lost Geographer podcast. Remember to tune in next week for another episode to aid you on your journey towards geographic and cultural literacy. In order to help spread the word, please rate, review, subscribe, and share the podcast so that we can help create a new wave of understanding in our world. Remember, it's your world. Own it.